with voter ID laws, the affirmative is saying that that we should have voter ID laws. Their big emphasis is because of the issue of fraud. We would like to explain that the issue is not in-person fraud. The negative is not denying that there isn't fraud in voting, but we want to specify that it's not in person. Again, like I mentioned before, there was a 5-year Justice Department review that found virtually no proof of an organized attempt to skew elections in person. And the voter ID laws, by showing a state ID, is what these would be preventing. There's only 9 states in the whole United States that require a photo ID to even register for an absentee ballot, which is where the main issue of fraud is, and even still it's very non-existent. According to the Washington Post, John Levitt, who conducted a study on this, says the thing about voter fraud isn't that it doesn't exist. Levitt told the Post on Monday, it does exist, and all responsible observers both know and say that. The question is whether the proposed policy solution, tighter ID requirements at the polls, is tailored to the problem that actually exists, and at the same time doesn't sufficiently severely create more trouble than it actually solves. He continues to state that it's clear that as the affirmative says, they want to impose these laws to uphold the integrity. Levitt explains that absentee ballots can still be a threat to the integrity of the election. By implementing these laws, it doesn't diminish or uphold the integrity of the elections, because voter fraud does still exist. It exists inside of absentee ballots, and the proposed laws do nothing to address the real issue. And there is a specific example that even though the absentee fraud exists slightly in Oregon, there was a man convicted for fraudulently mailing in ballots in 2000, and he was the 13th person in all of the state of Oregon over all of history to actually be convicted of this. That's very minuscule in my opinion. My opponent also brought up that there's been no case of anyone being denied to vote. He also said that they even accept expired IDs. However, according to Adam Cohen, who wrote an article about Indiana's challenges to their current voter ID laws, was advocating for this and said, the voter ID laws are actually very accommodating, and that they will accept voter ID laws. However, a few weeks later, 10 elderly nuns were barred from Indiana from voting because of their expired IDs. So not only are there cases of denied voters, but they actually are denied because of their expired IDs, which is the leniency that the affirmative side is suggesting. Also, according to John Wasik of Forbes magazine, he quotes, "I knew something was wrong afoot when my wife reported that a 90-year-old woman had to be turned away from voting early at our local polling place, and her crime was that she didn't have a driver's license because she wasn't able to drive anymore." So there's actually a few specific instances where people who are eligible voters, a 90-year-old woman, I don't think that she's being disenfranchised, and she was turned away from voting.